I welcome all our guests to the fifth roundtable discussion with the expert Global Forum. It is my pleasure to welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Chakar, CEO and founder, Link Advisory UAE. I am Dr. Aline Nassar, CEO and board chairman of Stokos, Australia. Stokos specializes in organizational excellence and capacity building. We are leadership development specialists and certified emotional intelligence experts. Stokos built capacity through customized private training and development, diplomas, certifications, workshops, conferences, and courses. All our trainings and courses are certified and CPD accredited and are locally and internationally recognized. Our group of participants today come from 11 different countries. I'm going to state them alphabetically. We have participants from Australia, France, India, Indonesia, KSA, Lebanon, Oman, Palestine, Qatar, UAE, and the USA. Once again, welcome everyone. I'm going to go over some housekeeping points. Kindly write your comments and questions in the chat box, and you are invited to use the raise hand option. During the session, we will use the breakout rooms. You will be notified when the breakout rooms are activated and when it is time to rejoin the main session. At the end of the session, I invite you all for a group photo. Kindly note the session is being recorded and the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. We will be emailing you the link. Today, we are privileged and very excited to have Mr. Chakar as our keynote speaker. George, the founder and CEO at Link Advisory, the 2Y3X master licensee in the MENA region, is an experienced strategy and leadership professional with diverse experience straddling over 20 years in hospitality development, strategic communications, growth creation, and coaching. George has a successful track record of creating a hyper-growth business environment and anchoring the delivery of business transformation across all points of an organization. George is known as a very committed natural leader and trusted business advisor with the intellect, gravitas, and expertise to inspire business owners and C-suite executives to lead growth through both vision and value. George very kindly would like to share his contact information with you all. It's already added in the chat box, and I'll add it in the chat box once more at the end of the session. Thank you, George, for joining us today, and now we'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Aline, for this lovely introduction. I feel really humbled by it. I would love to first thank you all for attending the session today. I am really grateful for your presence and for dedicating the time to be here with us today. While we might not be able to cover, let's say, in one session, in an hour session, what I would have loved to, still my promise to you is that I will share a few concepts about the pathway to impactful leadership. This will be something to remember really, and hopefully this will be something as well for you to reflect on. And most importantly, something that will be the beginning of a transformation. It will spark a beginning of a transformation. And I am genuinely committed to that. Before we start our session, as Aline mentioned, hopefully if you have any question, you can raise your hand. We will take the questions. Aline would like to share a poll, I think, with us.
Yeah, we can start with the poll. So I'm going to launch it now, and we have 1 minute to answer the questions, please.
So, what did you have for breakfast today? I can start seeing the results coming up.
Yeah, we're halfway.
Yeah. Interesting. Family, partner.
Six more to go. Four more to go. We're 83%.
Huh?
All right, we're going to end the poll now. And here are the results.
So let's look at the results. Interesting. So we had people who had cereal. So the purpose of this poll, guys, is just to get to know each other, to see really what is in common. We can see that 8 people had, breakfast with their families alone, 44%. No one had his pet beside him, although if I was in Lebanon today, I probably would have Royce beside me, in addition to my family. So Royce is my pet and my dog. So yes, it's really interesting to see you all, and it's a pleasure. I'm going to start sharing with you today a very dear subject to me, which is the pathway to impactful leadership. I'm going to share with you my screen, and we're going to start as we go. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
It's a little weird when everybody is on mute, but normally we have more engagements in a meeting room. But I'm gonna run with this. And you are seeing 2 screens of me. This is a backup again because of internet down or whatever. So I have my phone in case I need to switch to my phone. So the pathway to impactful leadership. As you can see from the title, there are 3 main words that are linked to this title: pathway, impactful, and leadership. And each one of those words means a lot to every individual of us. The reason for that is pathway is the journey that takes us from point 0 to point 1 in our lives. It takes us throughout challenges, ups and downs. It takes us through beautiful times, dark times, but there are lots of learnings, obviously. Impactful, it's the impact that either this journey has on us, or the impact that probably we have on people around us. Leadership is leadership, as you can see. Leadership defines us. So who we are is how we are being as leaders. I'm gonna start with impactful. The reason why this word is written like this is because it is obviously formed from 2 main words: impact and full. Impact is everywhere. You know, when you say good morning to somebody, there is an impact. When somebody calls you, there is an impact. When you laugh in front of somebody, you create an energy that creates an impact. Full is the size of that impact. When it's impactful, it means that it has a greater impact than anything else. And obviously, this is relevant to every person. It could be, for me, it could be impactful. For you, it could be a normal impact. So it's very important to distinguish between impact and impactful. I'm going to share with you a phrase that probably you are all aware of. And this is part of our daily life. Event plus response equal outcome. As human beings, and as probably you are experiencing like everybody else in the world with all the events that are happening recently, whether the pandemic or the economic crisis or in some countries, political unrests and so on. These are events. And those events are out of our control. Then you have response. The response is what we can control. This is our own individual response. Then you have outcome. And obviously, when you respond to any event, there is an outcome. That outcome could be something that you would have loved to have, and here we go. That outcome could be something that you don't want to have, and it's probably ugly, and it's causing anxiety and stress for you. But guess what? This outcome is because of a certain response that an individual has, whether me, you, or anyone in the world. Now, throughout my experience in the leadership and working with organizations and with individuals, I realized that this formula that I was introduced to a few years back is missing one main aspect, and this is impact. Because any response has an impact, and then outcome emerges. Within this formula now that has impact, I would like to ask you, which word from that formula you think is the most important word? Obviously, I was saying response. However, impact is also as important as response. Because impact can be unintended, meaning that an event plus unintended response, which could be impulsive or spontaneous, will lead to unintended impact, and this leads to a certain outcome. I don't know if anybody could tell us an example, could give us an example about an unintended impact. That would be great, and maybe we would like to unmute somebody. Kyle?
I gave privileges to participants to unmute themselves, so please feel free to unmute yourself when you want to talk.
Kyle?
There we go. Hi, how is everybody? Greetings from
Australia. How are you?
Shlonik Shakbarek, Kelam Arabi Shwaya Shwaya. So
you're calling from where?
I'm from Sydney, Australia, but I lived in Kuwait for 5 years and Bahrain for 3 years. So
brilliant. So Kyle, let us know a little bit about the unintended impact, if you could give us an example.
Yeah, well, for me, George, and thank you for sharing with us today, I'd be interested to hear your perspective on the difference between response and reaction. I was taught once that like an unintended response is more of a reaction than a response. It's kind of reacting to the event as opposed to actually responding to the event, which then leads to an unintended impact. So I was wondering if we could get your views on the difference between reacting to something and responding to something.
I love your perspective, and I think in this formula specifically, or probably the way you ask the question, definitely response is different than reaction. Reaction is, it could be emotional, but response also could be emotional. However, the unintended part is, I'm going to tell you a small story, and probably this would give you the difference. So in 2007, I had a job interview. I think probably one of the major jobs that I got in my life, and it was a big deal to me. So I was interviewed by a tourism authority in Abu Dhabi. It's where everything started in terms of development of tourism and cultural assets. The Louvre, Abu Dhabi, and probably you heard about all those projects. In the interview, when I was dropped at the Emirates Palace to meet, the department head and everybody there in the interview, they told me that I have half an hour. So the event was that I have half an hour, Kyle. Then I responded to that half an hour by ordering a nice glass of wine. Coming from abroad, I said this probably would ease a little bit. So my response to that event is that I was having a bit of nuts and a glass of wine, and suddenly, unannounced, the head of department comes 5 minutes after. So that was not a reaction necessarily, it was a response to an event. So I ordered the wine, the guy came to me. Obviously, this is an unintended impact. I didn't mean to create a certain impact. Now, this could go both ways, right? So it could go extremely ugly and I could lose the job, or it could go extremely good and I could probably get the job. And fortunately, I had a Scottish friend and mentor who thought that this is actually impressive. So it turned to my favor. So that's a small example on unintended impact. And this was a response, it wasn't a reaction. Now, a reaction is obviously impulsive. It could be emotional, it could be, but it's not necessary that it falls in the same way. So unintended, or the unintention of things, could happen even if you are responding. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, George. That's great. Thank you.
Now, intended, and this is here, I think, where again, it's a key perspective to look at. An event plus an intended response is equal to impactfulness, and not necessarily impact. And this is where you will have the full in the impact, which will equal to a desired outcome. So this is, as probably you know in your work and in your life, that a plan is better than no plan at all. So this is where the intention comes in things. Now, I would love to bring a perspective here, because the intended impact is beautiful if we know how to deal with it. For some leaders, this could mean as well creating intention that should come as well with responsibility and accountability. It cannot be just intended response, because this could lead to excessive abuse of power if the leader is manipulating because he has an intention and he wants a certain desired outcome. So I would like, to mention that intention here, if it is coupled with consciousness, responsibility, and accountability, then you are having a desired outcome. However, you are aware of your impact. And this is where I would love to bring something that had a major impact on my life, which was transformational, is the minute that I knew the ripple effect that my impact could cause if I do certain things with people. I know that if I bring an ugly energy in a meeting, or if I bully, or if I get bullied, or the ripple effect that this could cause on people. And this is where responsibility and consciousness comes. Therefore, there is a new level of leadership that is aware of his impact and her impact. And this comes where, whether it is intended or unintended, you still get a desired outcome. that's really a high level of consciousness and spirituality and awareness, which we probably, once we know, we cannot unknow. Once you do, you cannot undo, especially when it comes to consciousness. And this is where I would love to always be in this space. Am I always there? No. Is everyone always there? Definitely not. But we need to always be careful of our impact. I'm going to give you, who probably could give me an example on when you have, when is the level of leadership you reach in where you could have intended and unintended response and still get the desired outcome and be impactful? If anybody could give me an example, or even if you have a question.
Probably at this point, maybe we can do the comparison between the different types of leadership and how we present ourselves as leaders. What type of leader we are, how much of buy-in we have from our staff based on our leadership style.
Yeah, thank you, Aline. I think that's a good point. However, before I move from here, I just want to say that everything we do, or everything I do as an individual, there is always a muscle that we train. Being aware of the impact is a muscle that we train. If we do it consistently and we train ourselves to be aware and to have the awareness, we could reach this level of leadership where the unintended or intended response still can create impactfulness and still can create desired outcome. It becomes instilled in us. It becomes spontaneous. Even if we act spontaneously because of that background, because of having the empathy, because of having care, because we trained ourselves on all of these things, then the impact becomes really, I would say, a natural progression, and it becomes a beautiful outcome with people. So before, so this is, we're gonna move now to the pathway. The importance of this word for us is that it includes two things. Path is the way, or is the road, or is the route that we are taking, and the way we are being with ourselves and with people around us. So this is why pathway is, again, a very powerful word, and it means two things in one. What is leadership? Leadership is the ability, obviously, to mobilize people towards a common goal, and this is key. How do we do that? We do that in a coactive manner. It involves you as an individual, it involves others, and obviously, in order to be able to do that, you need to create connections and leadership, and and relationships, and that's the most important part in the leadership journey, is creating connections and relationships. Now, connection and relationships as being very, very important part of our journey, I would like to highlight here that everything starts with the self. That's a dimension. Then the team, then the organization. So it is self, then other, then what's out there. Therefore, I am serving myself first, then I am serving my colleague or my team second, then I am serving my community third. That's the journey of any leadership. Second one is self, family, and relatives. So that's in a context of, I would say, a close family circle. In the context of an organization and an impact on the world and on, on exploitation, Mother Earth, and so on, there is self, colleagues, and communities. So the question here is, as you can see from this, self is always there. So we always start our leadership journey from the self. Now, the third dimension, which is organization, relative, and communities, is always the others that we need to make sure that we are eventually serving in our leadership. Now, again, another level of leadership that we could reach at, which is leading from chaos. So, and that's where really a natural leader who trained himself throughout the years, who experienced and trained the muscle of different dimensions of leadership, could eventually lead from chaos. And that's key. But as you can see here, is that everything starts from self. Therefore, I'm going to move into something that I call the 5 limiting emotions of self. This is something that I personally had experience in when I did my leadership journey probably 5 years ago. And those 5 dimensions came to me in one of the retreats that I was doing. A question the leader asked, guys, I'm going to give you 15 minutes. I'm going to ask you to bury things that you want to get rid of from your lives forever, for you to be a better person and for you to be a better leader. I don't know why, but my intuition took me to those 5 limiting emotions, and this is where the real self-development started. I would like, before I start, to ask anyone from the attendees if they could probably mention a few limiting emotions, or could guess what those limiting emotions could be in the way of self-development and self-leadership.
Maybe fear.
Fear?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, George.
I believe it's anger. This is Rana. I believe this is anger or and envy.
Envy. I love. Thank you. Everything you said, it is true. And it all starts from those 5 emotions that I will be talking about, because fear, anger, and envy are part of this in a way or another, or under this umbrella in a way or another. So number 1 is ego. That's a huge limiting emotion, or drives emotion in any leadership context. The second one is shame, a feeling of shame. The third one is blame. The fourth one is guilt. And the fifth one is judgment. All those are limitations. And this is humanity. Probably you have all watched politicians, specifically in our region or everywhere in the world, even in the States recently with the elections. And this is by no means, guys, a political opinion. This is just an observation from a leadership perspective. It's all about blaming each other. It's all about shaming each other. The ego is the center of the universe for everybody of them. And it's all about judging each other. That's all what's happening in the world currently in the leadership space. Now, the key is to transfer those into a different type of emotion. And this is where we work with organizations and with individuals to help them to move from these states. Any leader today we work with in any organization, we take him through a leadership program, or even when we coach individuals, not necessarily in a corporate space. When we start with the self is always an interesting part, because this is where the discovery, I would say, period starts. So I'm gonna share with you now what is the opposite emotion and the distinction between, for example, something like ego and humility. So a leader should be able to move from ego to humility. From shame to accountability. Instead of shaming somebody, I need to hold that somebody accountable. By holding that somebody accountable, you're growing them rather than shaming them, because shaming, judgment, ego, blame, and guilt, guys, if you look at me now, I extract as a human being and as a leader. And when we actually approach people in front of us from the same space and the same energy, they extract as well. But when we hold them accountable, they grow, they expand. And this is where the distinction between extraction and expanding comes. Blame, we replace it by responsibility. Why do I need to blame anybody? I need to take full responsibility for my actions. This is where we spoke about the response and the impact. Guilt, forgiveness. Probably we all learned from our parents or the way we were brought up that guilt is part of, did I say something bad? I feel guilty about it. Did I do this? It is wrong. I feel guilty about it. No. Yes, we did probably something that had a bad impact, but I take full responsibility for it, and I forgive myself. Some people, they did something bad in an organization. They made fraud, for example. They cannot just carry this feeling for the rest of their lives, because they will be just locked in the past. They need to move. They need to go to the present, and this is where forgiveness comes. Moving from judgment to acceptance, accepting others. So working on the self in a leader, those are the 5 emotions, and these are the 5, I would say, opposites to it. This is what brings us from below the line, from the dark side, to the above the line, to the light side. This is why you see people, when you talk to them, you see their eyes are lit, their face is lit. You see them in a beautiful, positive place always. Even in tough times, you could always spot an opportunity, and in tough times, you could always as well, find the light in it. Specifically, people in areas and in locations where economic crisis is huge, or political unrest is huge, and they feel that things are hopeless. No, hopeless does not exist in this case of a self-leadership. There is always hope, and there is always something that we could do as individuals. That's a concept. Obviously, I'm sharing with you concepts. We're not really getting into the nitty-gritty detail of every concept, but I would love to hear questions on this space to really, answer anything before we go into our next concept.
I'll go. I don't know. I'm unable to see everybody, so just to double check if somebody else was about to ask a question. So apologies for that, because I'm focused on the screen. First, thank you so much, George, for this very interesting discussion. And good day, everybody. I love very much what you're saying, and that's, in my understanding, very much on personal self-discovery and all of that. But I would like to understand a bit, how would you think all of this could have an implication on, say, bottom line in a company, performance of organizations? On individuals, I get it, right? And on culture, probably. But would you think this realization of leadership would have implications on company growth, on bottom line? I don't know.
Thank you, Jihad, for the question. It's really interesting to answer something like this. It's key, actually. We all know that organizations are formed of people, and people are the asset of any organization. Hence, you see probably in the even the tagline of our company, it's a people-driven transformation company. So everything starts in any organization through people. the self, the importance of the self, and when we work with leaders in organizations, we take them through the journey of leadership. I'm going to give you an example that happened with us in a large organization here in Dubai. So we took 10 of the leadership individuals in a leadership program, and the first step was self-discovery. In the self-discovery, 3 of those 10 leaders resigned. They discovered that this is not the right organization for them, and they discovered that they don't have any more passion. They were just stuck there because that was their safety net. That was their safety zone. That was a safety. Their income was, was healthy, and they didn't need to do any more effort. Now, if I ask a question, what would be the result of somebody in that state of mind? Definitely, he's not performing well. He's doing the minimal he needs to do. Then my second question is, what is the impact of such an individual on his team? If a leader does not have enough passion, and he's not in a state of mind where he wants more, his ambition, he wants to transform things, he wants to bring, then if that impact is on the team, what would you imagine the impact is on the bottom line? Now take it on the other way. The 7 who stayed, they just, turned into leaders on steroids because they felt this is where we want to be and this is what we want to do. Now, what's the impact on their teams? And then on the bottom line. Now, the importance here is that the 3 who left, they were able to recruit 3 other people who have much more impact and much more leadership and much more passion and much more purpose and much more value in those jobs than the people who were in that organization in this place. Hence, the self is very important. Now, we're starting with those obviously emotional space because obviously it's a concept, but then when we take the individual in a process, a leadership program that we do normally takes 10 months, 12 months, sometimes even 2 years. It has leadership and coaching, so it's a mix of things. But this is just a concept to give you an indication how important is the self, and hopefully this will spark something in you guys, same way it sparked something in me when I started with myself as well. And this is an ever-ending, it's an infinite process. Every time you feel you are there, you need to start saying, what can I do better? Any other question? I know this is really a key topic, so I would love to take another question if there is. Cool. It seems you don't have...
George, if I would like to add something
Sure.
in relation to what we've just discussed, but I would like to twist it a bit. So if we're, as leaders, empower our team members, each and every team member, to being leaders themselves. So they're empowered to make decisions, be accountable, feel responsible. Then their performance, their motivation, their feeling of belonging, all the passion they put in the work they do would definitely be transformed because they belong and they want to work and they don't fear being blamed or shamed. They rather feel that they are a part of this group and anything goes wrong or not as planned, it's everybody's responsibility and everybody's accountable. Then these team members would be the support for the leader who basically, or initially, has given them the support. So it's basically a cycle, a vicious cycle. The more support you give to your team, the more support they give you back. You empower them, you get that power back tenfold. So it is very important and essential both ways.
True, true. I love what you're saying, Aline, and I think here, again, You mentioned about empowerment and you mentioned about how they could perform. Well, guess what? You just said it probably indirectly. That's the impact of a leader who is self-aware and has self-growth. And again, we're going into the intended impact. So if I am aware and I always develop myself and I grow in these areas and I manage my emotions, this doesn't mean that we eliminate spontaneity. Huh? People could always become spontaneous. But when you train the muscle to be able to manage those emotions and move from the fear that the envy that Rana mentioned, or the fear that George mentioned, or the anger into a positive emotion, then the impact and the ripple effect of that impact becomes huge. Leaders who are not self-aware, you know, there are leaders who use excessive power. They have power over, so this is a type of leadership. You have leaders who are bullies. Believe me from experience, this type of leaders are probably the most insecure leaders that you could work with. And I'm not here to criticize them, but I think we should be compassionate with them and we should have empathy towards them, because obviously they are going into an internal process that is not allowing them to foster and grow. And they are stuck to those limiting emotions that they are not being able to move from there. They are leading from hurt. They are hurt somewhere. Whereas a leader should lead from heart. It's just small change in the letters, but it makes a huge difference. Does that answer your question, Aline?
It does. Thank you very much.
Rana has a question. I would like to ask Rana and Kyle to hold their questions. I have still one concept I would like to share it with you, and then we will take the last 10-15 minutes, or maybe extend a little bit, 5 minutes more, to explore questions, if you don't mind. So the last word within the pathway to impactful leadership is leadership. It's leader and it's ship. It's the one who leads the ship. It's the captain. And probably some of you are aware of the responsibilities of a captain of a ship, or a captain of a plane. The responsibility is humongous: safety, security, well-being, health. Therefore, this is huge, and that's why it's called leadership. It's not called leader only. It was intentional to bring the ship to it because of the many dimensions that a leader needs to have. So I'm going to share with you the 5 dimensions of leadership. Dimension number 1 is leader in the front. And I would like to give you examples on, or one example. It's typically leader in the front are political figures, typically. They create connection with people and give direction to people. That's a typical leader in the front. A second leader is the leader beside. And the leader beside typically are business partners, wife, a brother, who basically create partnership and synergy with you. The third leadership is the leader behind. Typically, this leader, if I want to give an example, is the leader that serves and coach. A typical example could be a director of a movie. The one in the front is the actor. It could be Brad Pitt, could be George Clooney, could be anybody. But then the director is doing most of the work in the behind the scene. The manager, the stage manager, you know, all those guys who they don't appear in the front, they probably have as well a huge impact. Not probably, it's for sure. Then you have leader in the field. Leader in the field leads with intuition and innovation. A typical leader in the field example, this is something that happened with me actually. Probably it happens with you everywhere, especially in places that probably lacks organization. When you have a panic, you are in a panic situation. And suddenly, somebody emerges from the crowd and leads something, takes you somewhere. This guy is leading from an intuition perspective. So I was stuck in traffic, there is no traffic light, is broken, the police guy is not there. Suddenly somebody stops his car on the right side, comes down, hundreds of cars, he starts, fixing the way, and then 2 minutes later, there is no more traffic anymore. That's a typical leader in the field, somebody that emerges from the minute itself. And why intuition is linked to innovation? Because innovation as well comes from a creative space. And the field normally really enforce creative space. And creativity for human beings is the source of security. Because when you are creative, you are in your best shape and form. However, in order to have intuition and innovation, or in order to be a typical leader in the field, this doesn't come when you have all those limiting emotions and when you have all the, the anger, the fear, and what have you. On the contrary, this is a space where somebody who's already expanded, who's already reached to some sort of a level in his leadership, he is able to be immediately a leader in the field. Again and again, which is the biggest point for us that we always revolves around, is the leader within. This is where you lead with self-acceptance and self-authority. This is where you have your self-discipline, you have your commitments, you have your purpose, your value, and so on and so forth. Those are the 5 dimensions of leadership. Each dimension is a contributes. Now, leaders who achieved a lot in their lives, probably people who we know, and probably I'm going to ask you now to give me an example. The person who reaches in his leadership to dance with those 5 leadership dimensions, he is a person who could create movements in the world. Someone like Gandhi, who created the movement. Someone like Martin Luther King, who created the movement. Probably you have thousands of examples out there. So the person who is able to dance between those energies and bring those energies whenever they are needed, this is the leader who can create movements. I would love to work with a CEO who could be a servant at times, who could be at the behind. But whenever there is a mess up happening in the organization, he needs to step forward and be at the front, take responsibility, not just be where the credit is. He needs to be partner with every single person in an organization in order to be the leader beside that gives you support and create synergy and create alignment for the better goodness of the organization. The same with families. The same with communities. So that's again, it's a process. Again, I'm sharing with you concepts, and hopefully this is triggering some sort of reflections for you. But before we go into questions on this front, I would love Aline probably to give us the poll.
Sure, on its way. There you go.
Are we done with the poll?
We still have time. We still have 1 minute and 3 participants. Two participants left. One participant. And we're all set.
Great.
Here are the results.
Nice. All the above, obviously. It's really great, guys, to see that many of you, took time yesterday to review their day, because that's really a trait of a leader. It's really great to see that. What do you think yourself? Great. I would like to ask you a question, if you don't mind, guys. Are you able to take 10 more minutes? Okay, great. Okay, Aline, I would love to create a breakout room for the participants. And I have a question for you guys that I would like you to discuss amongst each other.
George, is it possible? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Is it possible to take Rana's and Kyle's questions before we move to breakout room, or would you like to just take the questions right at the end of the session?
Yeah, I would love to take the questions at the end, because then probably there will be more questions with the after the breakout rooms, if you don't mind.
Okay.
So I would like you to, in the breakout room, guys, you will have almost 4 minutes in the breakout room. So if you are 4, so there is 1 minute per person. Be sensible of the time. And I would love you to just answer 2 questions. Where are you in your leadership journey? Where do you think you are? And where do you see yourself in these dimensions that we spoke about? And means, where do you see yourself performing the best? Where is your core dimension? And which dimension you would like to grow further? So it's under one umbrella. I know it's like 3 questions. We're gonna put them in the chat now. Aline now is gonna invite you. Let me put them in the chat before you go, so you can have them. Aline is gonna do the breakout rooms.
When you go to the breakout rooms, there will be a timer, and you will be notified a minute before the time is up. You will have a countdown timer telling you that you will rejoin the main meeting page in a minute. So, are we ready, George?
Yes,
Okay.
we are. The question is in the chat. You could bounce off each other, and good luck.
Yeah, see you all in 4 minutes. I just had you're on your own, so I decided to join you. Oh, there's Rindala.
Hi, Rindala.
Hi.
Okay, I'll leave you now. I'll see you later.
Thank you, Aline.
Aline, did you unmute them? Because some of them are not unmuted.
They're all, they can unmute. They have the,
Okay, perfect.
they have the options.
Okay, good. So Maisa is here, but we cannot hear her. Rana is not answering. So Maisa, can you I mean, hello, Maisa?
Rana Maisa, can you hear us? Yes, hi guys. You've asked for help.
هاي ألين كيفك منال؟
Hi Manal, how are you?
سوري بس لأنه الكويستشن ما بقى we cannot see the question anymore.
Okay, so
Can you just put the question back?
The question is, can you, if you click on the chat, will you be able to see it? Will you be able to see it on the chat?
Chat. Okay.
Let me leave the room لحتى أطلع على المين لحظة. There you go. Oopsie, sorry. It's a very long one, so I'll type it. So السؤال هو منال ورولا. You will discuss where you are now in your leadership journey. يعني into where you feel you stand now, and out of the 5 leadership dimensions that were discussed, where do you feel you are, and discuss it into Rula to see how you guys find yourself at the moment. Like, is there any areas that you need to work on, to change, to improve, to enhance? What can you do to become a better leader, a more impactful leader, etc.? I'll leave you to join another breakout room. Yes, guys, you asked for help, Maisa and Rana.
No, Aline, on the screen, I got a request to unmute myself.
Yeah.
I didn't get any request for help.
Oh, okay. Okay. No problem.
I got a message on my screen to unmute myself. That's it.
Yeah. And I received...
you want me to mute again?
No, that's fine. It's just for you and Maisa to discuss the question that was put in the chat, which is basically at the moment where you find yourself as a leader, quote unquote, impactful leader, based on the leadership dimensionalities that were discussed, the 5 leadership dimensionalities. I'm happy to, did Maisa pop up at all?
I think she's still muted. I'm not sure if she's hearing us.
Let me change you to another room, just so that you have a chance.
So you assigned us 2 rooms. Okay.
Yeah, I'm moving you now.
Eileen, we're stuck.
Eileen, the timer finished.
Yes, it's all right. It's okay. Yes, Kyle.
We're stuck. How do we get out of the matrix?
Okay, there you go.
Dad, just close the
All right.
Welcome back, guys. So let's take, there are still a couple of people rejoining. Great. Okay, Aline, are you there?
I am.
You look, okay, great. So, can I ask for somebody to just let us know how was the breakout room? Any realization, any thoughts you would like to share with the group here? Any question? From here onwards is all about that, questions and you know, answering anything you want. And if you have discovered anything in your breakout room, please come forward.
Okay. I suggest that we start with Rana. She did have a question before we broke out, and then we'll move to Kayo.
Yeah.
Rana, please go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, George, for the interesting comments. Actually, I wanted to argue against some of the things that were mentioned in the presentation, and comment on a few others. It's not really a question. In the slide where you have posted like the direction of leadership, like self, team, organization, I would like to argue against by having it's not unidirectional. It's not an arrow that goes from the leader to the team members, then to the organization. I think it's bi-directional. And here I would like to bring few comments related to all the thoughts and research written about the co-creation of leadership from a follower perspective. So followers, they do impact us as leaders, their reactions, their response, how much they are able to really perform at the bottom line, as Jihad said earlier. So I believe those, and this creates also awareness in the leader themselves. So whenever they discover themselves through the eyes of their followers. So I believe it's not a unidirectional arrow, and this is my my counter argument, if I may say. It's a bi-directional. It's a bi-directional.
I love what you're saying. If you want me to answer, or you still have more, please.
I still have few comments, and then I would love to hear what you have said. From the entire thing that I have seen in the presentation, it's like an amalgam of theories and concepts related to leadership. I can see features of servant leadership popping out. I can see a lot of transformational components coming up. But I do also argue against that in certain industries. I'm not sure in others, but I'm very familiar with the healthcare because I come from a healthcare perspective. There is always a say that you need to balance between transformational and transactional, or else the bottom line wouldn't be moving in a way. This is not to deny that the discovery of the self and the movement towards the humility and accountability and responsiveness and acceptance, but this transactional component should always be there. I'm not sure when you hinted on the 5 dimension of leadership, if when you said that the leader has to shift gear and go back to like be on the forefront in a case of chaos, you meant this, you really hinted on the transactional. But in healthcare, because life matters and you need to be like, the margin of error is so tight or else we lose lives. The transactional component is very important. It's not, it doesn't have to be all the time transactional, but a certain balance. As you go up in the ladder, transactional goes down and transformational or any other higher level leadership goes up, but the transactional component always remains there. These are my comments. I thank you for the time. I will be glad to hear your
I love, yeah, thank you, Rana. First, I'm sorry to keep you waiting for the question, but it looks like it was worth the wait. Thank you really for your comments and for your feedback. To be honest, this is not counter argument at all. I see this as number 1, complementary to what I said. Number 2, in the first intro in my presentation, I said I wish we could talk more about every single aspect of these. And obviously, there are things that I didn't touch on and you brought forward, which will serve everybody around the table. So number one, you said something about bi-directional. So if I want to go back to that presentation, self, team, and for example, organization, or self, colleagues, and communities, and self, and family, and so on and so forth. The self is anybody, everybody. So number one, the concept of leadership is that every single human being in the world on earth is totally creative, resourceful, and whole. So that's where we start in the leadership. So every single person in the world is a leader. Every single person in your hospital is a leader. The person who takes care of coffee, if a day he didn't come and something happened to him or whatever, everybody in the probably who was waiting for the morning coffee, he's impacted. Probably the mood changes and you suddenly have grumpy people. So every single person for me is important. For some people they put hierarchy, so this is less important, more important. However, from a leadership perspective, every single human being who has passion and is creative enough and he's accountable and takes responsibility of whatever he's doing, whether it's small or big, simple or complex, is a leader. So that's, I hope this answers the bi-directional and the follower. So the follower, yes, when we work with organizations on the 2Y3X program, for example, we form something, we call it growth labs. The growth lab is never formed from neither the CEO or the executive team. It's always formed from middle management and below. These are stars that we identify in organizations that have the motivation and they are creative and they have the will and the passion, they want to move forward, and etc., etc. So whereas in some perspective they could be follower, in other perspective they are leaders, and probably they will be the future leaders and they will take the organization forward. So the impact is both ways, definitely. So that's the second. Third, amalgam of transformational. Yes, I know, I totally agree. Transformational and transactional, they both exist. I started with the self, obviously, but then from, so the concept is that you lead from self first, then you lead with others, then you lead from everything around you, then you lead in chaos. So obviously in your industry, which is the healthcare, leading from chaos is the energy that probably is required the most. In the states of panic, in the states of, whatever it is. I'm not the expert in healthcare, but I totally understand where you're coming from. So I would say we are in total alignment and agreement, and thank you for bringing this. It's very, very important that you brought it, and probably I have missed it. I hope I answered your question and your observation. Rana?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, George. We can go on forever discussing the comments about leadership.
It's an open-ended, of course. I mean,
it's a never-ending discussion.
Of course. It's a 60 minutes session, and I wanted to share with you concepts to spark something. These are leadership programs that people take years and years and years, invest in themselves and in their teams, and vice versa, to to understand them more and more. And it's a human condition, it's the life condition that we are dealing with. So yeah.
Very true. Very true. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kyle?
You guys are giving me an idea to probably have a session where we could bring more than one person who's a leadership expert with leadership knowledge, and probably include Rana with us and George and a couple of more speakers, and have that type of discussion. Sure. And that would be a great, probably roundtable discussion to be planned for the future. How about we take Kyle's question?
Yeah, thank you, Eileen. George, I'm not going to argue with anything you said. I promise.
No, you please.
No.
That's where growth happens, my friend. It's
I'm
at
just-
the point of argument and debating. That's the beauty of leadership.
Yeah, I'm only joking, and I'm glad that Rana did that. That's awesome because we can all learn from each other. So that's great. I just wanted to add on there. Just I've read from writings of one man called John Maxwell, who speaks a lot on leadership. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he talks about this phrase that says leadership is influence, nothing more and nothing less. And the whole idea of how, like you were just touching on with Rana, that anyone can lead. You don't need a title, you don't need an office to be a leader. You can lead by, you can be the lowest level of employee in a company, but you can lead by your example. You can lead by your attitude. You can lead by a whole bunch of different things. I just wanted to add that on to what you said there with Rana, but my initial question was just about the empowerment thing that Aileen was talking about before the breakout rooms. And I think that comes down to an insecurity, which you touched on with leaders, is that they're afraid to empower other people. I have a son who's 12 now. He's school captain at his public school. And I say to him every morning before I take him to school, I say, a leader never takes the credit, but always takes responsibility. And I make him say that after me and say that with me. And he said, oh, I don't really like this leadership thing. I don't know if I want to be a captain if I have to take all the responsibility. But when it comes down to it, if a leader doesn't care who gets the credit, just as keeps deflecting it back to the team and back to the everybody that's involved, like you were touching, I feel like that. Sorry, my battery almost died. I feel like that is the most, for me, the most rewarding, is that when there's a leader that isn't looking for the credit, isn't looking for all of the accolades, but just wants to do it all together with his team. My question is, what do you think about that?
I love what you said first about influence, because influence, I mean, there are different terms. I use the word impact. I use the word mobilizing teams towards one direction. So obviously, in order to create an impact and in order to mobilize people, you need to have a certain influence. Now, influence could be sometimes as well wrongly interpreted. It's you could influence by manipulation. So being aware of your ripple effect when you do that is very important, because everything comes back in a way or another. So, so I am keen on always bringing the ripple effect of things. In our region, for example, there is something that we had probably most of us experienced, which is the referral fees or succession fees that we come across when we are referring business to each other, which is great and probably in the business sense is legit. But then when it goes you know, one step further into an under the table type of relationship, that becomes that has precautionary measures and the ripple effect, because it impacts probably another company that could have taken the job. It could impact people that probably they would have lost their jobs if they didn't take it, because you were able to work under the table. So you took a decision as a leader to go this route because you have influence, right? But it's not necessarily ethical. So influence alone is not enough. The intended impact is not enough. You need to move one step level beyond the intended impact and say, so I am training myself to understand what's the ripple effect of my impact and of my action, and bring the consciousness to it. When you bring consciousness to it, it becomes easy. And here I'm not talking the typical cliche of do you have conscious or no. It's the consciousness. It's being aware that this is what I am doing and this is what could be the impact. This, again, I say it and I say it 100 times, it doesn't take away from being spontaneous, because we are humans and we need to be spontaneous. But when you train the muscle, your spontaneity becomes accustomed to that by default, and by default it becomes fluid. One more thing, because you triggered really beautiful questions here as well, Kyle. You know, a leader, when he has influence or he is being perceived, again, because of the impact, this is where his brand and his story starts to appear and starts to emerge, right? So this guy comes on time, he's always dressed neat, you know, he's always prepared for his meetings, so that he starts creating his brand and his story because of his leadership actions. Well, this guy, you know, he comes always casual, he's flexible, you know, he's approachable, he's always supportive. This is, again, becomes a brand and a story. You got me? So that brand and story is the way we see ourselves first, then the way we are perceived second, but it's all dependent on the impact that we are creating on ourselves, on others, and on the community. It's the way we are all showing up to the world. How am I showing up? What am I being while I am doing? That's the essence of that influence, Kyle. So I hope that answers your questions, and I would love to hear from Fadi, an old colleague and a dear friend as well, and a leader as well in his own context.
Thank you, George. Long time. Just to tell you a bit, for me, leadership is Kaizen. It's continuous improvement. And when we went into the breakup rooms, we had discussed it extensively. And yes, you need to follow a certain path. You need to repurpose your path as you go. And you need to be a bit multidimensional on the different elements of your leadership. Definitely you would have a dominant trait. This is no doubts about it, but you need to be well-rounded to be able to move. It depends on your position in the company. So the dominant trait that you would work on would be something that would work with your function, with your job. I give always an example on leadership. And that is, I don't know if guys, ladies and gentlemen, you're aware of what is called the, if you want, the panic euphoria continuum. And this is in business, and this is usually in sales. And eventually, if you go into a sale, a mega sale, and you get out of the meeting, how many times we get out of a meeting and we say, yes, we did it. We just locked it, and we stopped doing anything later on. And all of a sudden, we get the result a week, 2 weeks later, and sorry, we've decided to work with a different vendor. And this is where you never, in leadership, you should never be on the extreme lines. You should be able, leaning towards a direction, but at the same time be wise to measure and weigh 360 degrees the position you are in, rather than go into a euphoric mode and automatically swing to a panic mode for no reason, and let the organization or your team or even your partners dwindle with you in such a position. So this is just, and thank you, George. It was quite insightful. In terms of a session, and would love to have more.
Thank you, Fadi, for what you have said, which it's a beautiful perspective, and I totally relate to being in one stage in the same industry in the old days, and now still in the same, I would say, context, but not necessarily industry. What probably I would add to this, Fadi, is that the minute I think there is, I have a slide, I would like to share it with you. It's a part of the presentation. It's a slide that I would love to leave with you before we leave, actually. It's something to linger and you know, think of. As in the space and in the spirit of creating really major impact, because this is, you know, the pathway of impactful leadership comes from my own journey. And this is what I do in life. I am committed to help leaders create bigger impacts while they are responsible. You know, help them through creating conversations that matter, because that's where the key thing lies, is through those conversations. And this is, you mentioned something, Fadi, here, and there is something I call the power of conversations and the power of feedback. So when you go out of a meeting, you think you nailed it. There is always an opportunity to say what we could have done better, and reading energies in the room. That's where the power of, you know, distinction comes. The power of celebration, then the power of empowerment, the power of empathy. All these are concepts that every single one of them is a leadership trait in itself. If we practice those regularly, then that adds a lot on our dimensional, that the one that you said. That's where the panic, whether it's to one side or the other, becomes very much part of a certain journey, and we're dealing with it as it comes. That's how I see it. So acknowledging is a huge distinction between, for example, selfishness and selflessness. This is distinction. The conscious of things, the feedback, huge organizations that foster the culture of feedback, empowerment, and accountability. The bottom line becomes I would say, a natural progression. There's no more issues there. The power of perspectives, you know, being flexible to take the other person's perspective, creating alignment rather than agreement, because sometimes you probably will not agree on 99%, but you probably could create alignment that could take you to a certain objective. The power of love, obviously, and empathy and celebration. How many times, Fadi, you know, we do things in life, especially in our industry, because it's always about pressure and, you know, deadlines and delivery. We fail to celebrate. You know, that's huge. Celebration is huge. And I think now with the pandemic and with everything happening around us, we should celebrate the fact that we have good health. We should celebrate the fact that we still have great friends. We should celebrate everything. That's leadership. That's the impact that we create around us. And that's the positive ripple effect that starts to emerge and starts to grow with time. So thank you for bringing that perspective, which led to a beautiful segue towards this last slide that I love to share with you. And this is, it's part of a daily practice that I think if we do it well, it takes us to really positive relationships and connections, because that's all what we seek. We were born in tribes. Human beings were born in tribes. And it's all about connections and relationships. And in order to foster those, you know, there are things that we should go back to and, you know, really think of. So yeah.
And work on.
Any other question?
I said think of and work on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's addictive, actually. The more you do this work, the more you think, I can do more, I can grow more, and you know, it's risky, but it's risky to get into a vicious cycle of keep learning. It has to be also paralleled with actions and objectives and so on and so forth.
It's that good risk that you take. Well, I have to thank you, George, and thank everyone for staying the extra time with us. It was definitely a very insightful presentation and session. Loved the discussion. And I'm sure we're going to plan something that is more of group roundtable discussion on the same topic of leadership, and hopefully have more time to discuss. I'll reach out to you guys and we'll organize that. Thank you everyone for attending, and hope to see you in our next event. Bye-bye.
Thank you all, guys. And, before we go, I just want to say that you could reach out to me. You have my contact details, anytime, and I will email you. I will make sure to email you, and thank you as well for being part of the session. So you take care, guys, and have a lovely day. Thank you, Aline, for the support.
Sure, thank you. Bye-bye.